When the earthquake occurred, I was in the tax office of the Setagaya ward at Umegaoka, which is only about a 5-minute walk from where we are right now. And I was waiting in line with some questions about my taxes or my completed tax forms. And it was a sort of a medium-sized office room. There were about 20 people waiting in line with me. There were about 5 people at the counter taking the forms and answering questions. There were 2 or 3 people who were sort of directing people where to go and sort of guiding the movement of the line. So altogether, perhaps there were 30 people in this room. I was listening to music in the earphones at the time, so I was sort of oblivious, perhaps, to what was going on for a little while, but as I was listening, I started to see around me that people were, looked a little strange, and then I felt there was a little shaking, and so I knew there was an earthquake. I took off the earbuds and paid attention, and of course, being in Tokyo, we know that there are earthquakes all the time, and I'm sure that everybody expected, as I did, that this would just be a minor, typical Tokyo earthquake. It'd be over in a few seconds. But, after a half a minute or so, it became apparent that this was something more serious, more powerful. And then the people who were managing the movement of the line sort of took charge, and they said, everybody get down on the floor. So we all knelt on the floor, and held on to whatever was nearby. I was alone. I couldn't really grab a person, but there was a little post next to me that I held on to, and we all sort of looked at each other, looked around, and waited it out, and it lasted several minutes. And it was certainly the most powerful earthquake I had experienced, or I imagine anybody else in that room had experienced. And when it was over, I was very impressed. The man who was in charge of the line said, "All right, is everybody okay? If you're feeling sick, tell me, or if anybody needs any help, tell me." And this was very nice. This man was probably a volunteer of the tax office, but he and the people who were working with him were completely able to manage the situation and very very concerned about the other people. So this was very good. But anyway, when the earthquake was over, we all sort of got up, shook ourselves off, and continued our business. We just went to the counter and did what we came to the tax office to do. There was no TV, there was no news in that room, so none of us, I think, knew the seriousness of what had happened. But I imagine all of us wanted to get out and turn on the news and find out what was going on. But we completed our business and went on with business as usual. That was my experience of that earthquake. Now, I did not feel panic. At the time of the earthquake, or afterwards when the news came about the tsunami, about the crisis at Fukushima. No, my reaction was not panic. My reaction was more, concern. Mainly concern because I have a 4-year-old son, and I'm responsible, of course, for him. And so my biggest worry was, what's the best thing to do for him, especially in regard to the, what was happening at Fukushima and the uncertainty of that situation, the possibility of radiation coming to Tokyo. And my wife felt the same. We didn't know quite what to do about that. But panic, no. Fear, yes. I think regarding the worst disaster in the areas that were affected by the tsunami, regarding the efforts to find survivors, to take care of people who had lost their homes, the media, as far as I could tell, certainly provided adequate information. The coverage of that situation was exhaustive, really. It was on TV all the time for weeks after March 11th. Regarding the nuclear power plants at Fukushima and the problems that were encountered there and the efforts to get the problems under control, my impression really is of a great deal of confusion coming out of the mass media, coming from the government, coming from TEPCO. So I would have to say that on that matter, you know, this important issue of public safety, of public health, I don't think the mass media or the government provided adequate information. I don't think they did what they should have done to inform the public and to bring clarity to the situation. I think that regarding the nuclear plants and the crisis there, the government and the mass media have been more involved in kind of managing perceptions, controlling fears. I think part of the confusion may even have been a deliberate attempt to make people feel more powerless. If nobody knows the real situation, then people are going to feel, well, all we can do is just hope for the best and trust in something. And maybe this is what the government perhaps wanted, rather than get people angry over the mismanagement of the situation, including the fact that these plants were there in the first place, which raises the entire issue of the use of nuclear power in Japan. Rather than get people angry about this, it's better to keep them in a state of anxiety and confusion. And I think the mass media did that. Well, I hope this doesn't sound too cynical, but my impression is that the Japanese people, among their other native skills and talents, are very good at following instructions. And I think that, the 2 months and several days since March 11th have shown Japanese people doing exactly that. People do what they're instructed to do. If TEPCO says that there's going to be a rolling blackout in Tokyo, that certain neighborhoods will not have power for certain hours of the day, then everybody studies the schedule, figures out what part of Tokyo they're in, when the power is going to possibly be out, and they go along with it. People follow the cues from the media. When it starts to be clear that help is needed for the displaced people in Ibaraki Prefecture, and that there are ways to give help. The media shows you what you can do, where you can donate clothes, books, food, and the people help out. And the Japanese people, as far as I could see, came through in exactly the way one would hope people would come through for their neighbors in a crisis. No, I don't feel unsafe being in Japan now. We know that major earthquakes could always happen again here, and that's a threat that we've learned in some way to accept. Those of us who live here temporarily, as I do, as well as people who live here permanently. And of course, there's continuing danger from the nuclear power plants in Fukushima. But as far as I can tell, there's always a certain amount of hope and uncertainty and optimism, but it doesn't seem to be a danger great enough that I should, feel unsafe right now. I don't know whether a change has been taking place in Japanese society or will take place, but I certainly hope that a change is taking place. I certainly hope so. And the change that I'm hoping for, and that I think many people are hoping for, not just in Japan, but all over the world, is that the people of Japan, who have lived through this disaster, who have seen the government's response, seen TEPCO's response, who have seen the result of poor planning and mismanagement of the nuclear power plants crisis, that there will be more of a move toward direct democracy, toward direct decision-making by the citizens, regarding decisions that affect their health, their safety, their lives. People all over the world, because of fear, because of a sense of powerlessness, are always too willing to accept what the government decides for them. The government says, well, we're going to put this power plant here, some of you will have to move, we'll give you a little money, but you'll be okay, there's no danger. We can't accept this. And in a truly direct democracy, these decisions would not be made against the will of the people. The people would be responsible for the decisions that affect them. In a direct democracy, also, there would be a media, a mass media that would be responsive to the needs, desires of the people, and not responsive to the need of the government and of the monopoly utility companies like TEPCO to control information and to control perceptions. So the change that I'm hoping will come, and of course I don't expect that a change like this is going to happen overnight, but every crisis such as this, every disaster, every impingement on human freedom, on human rights, is on the one hand a tragedy, on the other hand it's an opportunity for people to understand the needs to take things into their own hands and to develop a program for doing that. So that would be the change that I would hope to see in Japanese society. In the days after March 11th, I received many messages of concern from family and friends, some by email or over Facebook or by telephone, asking how I was, how my family was, what the situation was like here, and what we were going to do. And I was very, very moved, to receive so many expressions of this concern. So my message for my family and friends is thank you very much for continuing to think of us. And as I said privately before, now it's on the internet. Thanks, and please don't worry, we'll be okay.